Welcome back, everybody. Before we get started today, I wanted to remind you guys that anytime you need to re-watch something, or if I said something too quickly or you didn't catch it all, please pause the video, rewind it a little bit, and start watching it again. That's the whole point of these videos, is you guys can watch it as many times as you need to. So that being said, let's get started. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be looking at negative slope. If we were given an equation that had negative slope, how would we graph that? We've already done positive slope, where we had an equation of a positive line and we graphed that. So today, we're going to look at how do we graph something if we're given an equation that has a negative slope. As always, quick review. First off, slope-intercept form is written as y equals mx plus b. And I want to see if you guys can figure out the m and the b on your own. So pause really quickly and see if you can write down what m and b are both supposed to be. So hopefully you remembered that m represents the slope of a line. So m represents the slope. And then you also hopefully remembered that b represents the y-intercept of a line. Okay, so now we have slope and y-intercept. So let me give you an equation. We'll go ahead and get started and we'll see what we can come up with. Let's start with the equation y equals negative, we'll say 3/5 x. And for this one, let's just say plus 4. So negative 3/5 x plus 4. All right. First off, where do we start? Do we start with the slope or do we start with the y-intercept? Hopefully you remembered that our first point that we always do when we're dealing with slope-intercept form is we always start with the point of the y-intercept. So in this case, that's this number right here. It's our positive 4. So on the y-axis, which is the vertical one, the one going up and down, we're going to start by putting our first point at positive 4 on the y-axis. And that represents the variable b in the slope-intercept form. So there's our first point. The second point comes from the slope. And one of the things that, for some reason, trips up a lot of students is when you look at the slope. If you look at negative 3/5 x, one of the things that a lot of students like to do is they say, oh, negative 3/5, that just means negative 3 and negative 5. The problem with that is, if you think about your integer rules, a negative divided by a negative is a positive, which is not what we started with. So this is not correct. What it should be is negative 3 over positive 5. Okay? And the reason that we can do that is, remember, when we calculated out negative slope on our last lesson, it was a downward movement of 2 and then a positive movement to the right. And whenever you have a negative slope, it's always going to be down and to the right. So that's what you need to think about. The rise is the negative part and the run is the positive part. We just write it as negative 3/5. So if we had a slope of m equals negative 3 and positive 5, then the way that we would count this out, or the way that we would graph our points, just like when we had a positive slope, we start with the rise and then we count out the run. So we have a rise of negative 3 from our point on our graph of positive 4 on the y-axis. We're going to move down 3 spaces. That's our rise of negative 3. And then our run of positive 5 means that we're going to move 5 spaces to the right. Okay, so here's our second point. Now hopefully you also remember that when we did this with positive slope, I told you guys to always count out twice to make sure that you didn't double count any squares or possibly skip any squares. That way all 3 points, if you count correctly, should be in a straight line. And I know it sounds stupid, but it helps a lot, and I've messed up I don't even know how many times when I counted wrong. So I do it for myself just because I know that if I don't, chances are I'm probably going to make a mistake. So from our second point, we're going to do the exact same thing again. We're going to go down 3 spaces, and that was terrible looking, but we got to where we wanted. And then we're going to move over 5 spaces as well. and we get our second point. Okay? Now, when you guys do this, hopefully you're using a straight edge. It's hard to do that on an iPad, so I'm not going to. But if we were to draw our line here, our line would just go like this, straight through all 3 points. Again, if you had a ruler, it would look better. And that would be the graphical representation, or a line on a graph, that matches the equation y equals negative 3/5 x plus 4. So, what I want to do now is I want to give you another one to work on, and I want you to pause the video and try to solve this one on your own once I give it to you. And then when you think you have it done correctly, go ahead and restart the video and see what you got and make sure it matches what I show you on the screen. So here we go. Here's your equation. I'm going to give you y equals negative 1/2 x minus 3. So there's your new equation. Y equals negative 1/2 x minus 3. So go ahead and pause your video, and when you're ready, you can restart, and we'll see how you did. Okay. Hopefully you paused on time. If not, pause quickly. And let's go through and let's graph this. So the first point we're going to look at is negative 3, because that's our y-intercept. So our y-intercept of negative 3 means I'm going to look at the y-axis, and when I see negative 3, that's where my first point is going to go. So I'm going to put my first point right here at negative 3, and then from that point, my next step is to calculate, or rather count out, the slope. So my slope on this line is negative 1/2. And remember that negative 1/2, we can rewrite it as negative 1 over 2. Okay, and that just helps remind us that we move down 1 space and then 2 spaces to the right, just as a way to help keep our brains a little more organized. So from this point, I'm going to go down 1 space, and I'm going to go 2 spaces to the right, and there's my second point. And then from there, just like before, I'm going to count it out again and go down 1 space, and then move 2 spaces to the right, and there's my second point. And when you have small things like this, it doesn't hurt to do a couple of extras just so it's easier for you to write your straight line with your ruler. So I'm going to just count out a couple more, move down 1 and over 2, down 1 and over 2 again. So now I have so many points that it would be practically impossible for me not to get the straight line on this one. And on this one, my straight line is going to look, well, if it were straight, it would look something like this. And that would be the graph of the equation y equals negative 1/2 x minus 3. Alright guys, I will see you all tomorrow. Make sure you've got a good understanding. Talk to you later.